Welcome to this Lawcate interview. My name is Fasai and I am a law student at Monash University. I am pleased to introduce our guest this week, Liz Main. To start us off, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and your role, and also what do you study?
Studied arts in my undergrad with a philosophy major. And then I studied law postgraduate as the Juris Doctor. And I worked at a plaintiff firm as a paralegal for a couple of years, and then I worked as a judge's associate at the county court in the commercial division. And I was there for just under 2 years, and it's the kind of role where most people, it's not sort of a forever job, it's more of like a stepping stone job in your career for most people. And so I was thinking about what I wanted to do next, and I wasn't feeling particularly inspired by any sort of particular areas of law weren't really grabbing me. And so I started thinking about whether I would actually like to be a journalist instead. And so I ended up working at the Australian Financial Review as a journalist for about a year and a half, which was so exciting. And they didn't care that I had never written a news article before and I had never studied media before. I actually worked with a lot of ex-lawyers there. But then after a while, I started sort of going into court more and more and reporting on juicy court cases and class actions and things. And I just loved doing that. But after a while, I realized, I actually think I just love being in court. And that was really it felt like my comfort zone to go and do that. And so then I decided to actually return to law. And I've now been back working as a judge's associate for another judge at the county court for just over a year.
Well, thank you for sharing your career journey, and it's really incredible to see the different transactions between different fields. So I think now for Lawcate interview, we always have the 3 icebreaker questions for our interviewers. So the first question is, when you were shy, what did you want to be when you grow up?
I think my earliest memory is that I wanted to be a police officer because I wanted to go, chase down bad guys and burglars and things like that.
And also, if you could describe yourself at law school in 3 words, what would it be?
Oh, gosh. I think at times very a little bit lost. I think particularly my first year, I found things, it took me a while to hit my stride with studying and finding the right way to study. So I think in my first year, I was a little bit lost with that. Social, I made a lot of really dear friends at law school, especially just in the first couple of days of uni that I'm still very close with. I suppose passionate. I think I started after a while when I did really hit my stride, I think in first and second year, I started to really hone in on electives that I was really fascinated by, particularly media law and things around people's reputation and things like that. And that's still something I'm very passionate about.
Right, and I think a lot of law students can really relate to you in terms of that coming into first year and found it a bit challenging because the way they study law is probably different to what they used to in high school. So what did you do while you were at law school that helped you to get to where you are now, and how did you get involved with these opportunities?
Just prior to going to law school, so I didn't have any legal experience. I've never worked at a law firm. I didn't have any lawyers in my family. So I actually volunteered at a not-for-profit legal organisation called Justice Connect. And they do a lot of work. They have sort of different sectors, but they do a lot of work providing legal advice to homeless people and to not-for-profit organisations. And that was really good just to sort of get a taste for if I even liked law and if I liked working with lawyers and things like that. So I think that is a really good step if you don't have any experience, because of course everyone starts with no experience. Working just as a volunteer can be a really good way to get your foot in the door. And then after that, once I was at law school, I worked as a paralegal at a boutique law firm. And the skills that I had learned from working at Justice Connect around just like answering the phones and doing administration and sort of starting to be comfortable with legal jargon, those were then things that I kept building on as a paralegal at the boutique law firm. So it just kept sort of, your experience starts to sort of snowball a little bit, and then you sort of keep progressing forward from there.
Also, onto the reflections. So what's something that surprised you about the legal industry when you started out?
I think that I was very surprised at the friendships that I made. There are a lot of my friends I have made through my work. And when I was a paralegal at the plaintiff firm, there were lots of other paralegals in my team, and a lot of them are people that are still really dear friends to me. And I think I hadn't really turned my mind to that about how important that would be to me. So yeah, that's definitely something that surprised me.
Right. And if there was one thing you wish you had done at university or earlier in your career, what would it be?
This is something that I have only very recently learnt to do and have felt comfortable with, and that is to, when you receive, say at uni, when you receive an assessment back and your feedback, actually reflect on that feedback and think about what will I do differently next time. I think my style at uni was, and I think this may be the case for a lot of law students, because we're perfectionists and we find it hard to hear about mistakes that we've made and things that we could have done better. But I think if I had my time again, after I got my exam results back or an assessment back, I would make a time to speak with my lecturer and just go through the paper with them and think about what would I do differently like next time. I think that I had quite a rigid mindset that however well I do in this subject, that's my maximum potential, and I can't really improve on that. And I think that a much better mindset is a growth mindset in which you can, there's really no such thing as natural talent, and it's actually just a matter of adjusting the way that you do things, and slowly you'll improve.
Now we're going to talk about your current positions now. What are the biggest challenges you face in your current role, and how do you overcome them?
So my current role is that I'm a judge's associate at the county court in the criminal division. And I absolutely love my job. I find it so exciting, and I love going to work and I love being in court. But a very real challenge that we all face, particularly in the criminal division, is vicarious trauma. And that is the idea that you will be hearing the experience of someone who something very traumatic they say has happened to them, and then you take that on vicariously through them, and you become distressed by hearing that information. Luckily, the court has lots of really excellent resources, including psychologists that we can speak to for free confidentially whenever we want. And I think that the court has a really good culture of people feeling very open about talking about things and coming out of court and saying, wow, I found that really hard to listen to. And I think that's the best thing that we can do. But yeah, vicarious trauma is definitely a real challenge in my job.
Right, and thank you for sharing that. And what is your favorite thing about your current role, and why did you choose to pursue this path?
The reason as a journalist that I loved going to court is just the amazing stories that you hear every day. Even I've previously worked in the commercial division, hearing about, you know, someone's business. They went into business with their best friend and now it's all fallen apart and they're suing each other. Or, you know, in the criminal division, if someone's pleaded guilty, you hear about, you know, the elaborate offences that they've now admitted that they've committed, and just hearing about their life story and things like that, I find really fascinating.
What are the biggest lessons you have learned in your career so far working at the court?
The biggest lesson that I have learnt is that you should be brave and take risks in your career, especially if there's something that you've always like secretly wanted to try, or you know, like for me, once I had the idea in my head, you know, I think I'd really like to be a journalist. I would have hated to just stay in law and spend the rest of my life wondering like what would that have been like, or would I have made it? And I'm very glad that I took the risk and had a career change and went and did that. And so I really encourage anyone who has a passion outside of law. It might be you love baking or gardening or kayaking. Definitely, like keep that in your life and think about, you know, if it is something that you want to pursue, because I think that in law there are actually a lot of ways to integrate things that you're passionate about. For example, my time working as a journalist, I'm extremely interested in media law, and that's an area that I intend to practice in next. I have another friend who she was working at a commercial firm and in property, and she absolutely loved yoga. And she ended up doing a yoga teacher course, and she now works as a teacher part-time, but she also now works as a lawyer for a healthcare organisation. And so she's been able to sort of bring her passion for health into her work as a lawyer. So yeah, I would just really encourage people to take risks with their career and really try and find a way to work in an area that you're really passionate about.
And I think this is a really an incredible advice, because I think also a lot of law students at Monash University are also doing double degrees, and some of us are also, most of us actually have been advised to just follow the traditional path of being a law student, getting a clerkship, and going to commercial law. So your advice is valuable for a lot of students. Thank you so much.
Definitely. So when I was at uni and it was time for everyone to be applying for clerkships, it was a very stressful time at uni, and it felt quite, there was sort of this like undercurrent of competitiveness at the law school. And I unfortunately didn't receive any clerkship offers. And at the time I was very devastated by that because, as you said, I think we're sort of really taught at uni that this is your pathway. The only option that you have is commercial law, and the only way to get a job is to get a clerkship. And that is just absolutely not true. Because I didn't get a clerkship, instead I worked as a paralegal when I finished uni at a really wonderful plaintiff firm. And then I was approached by a lawyer that I worked with who became a mentor for me. And she said, have you thought about being a judge's associate? I think you'd really like it. And I ended up applying for a job and doing that. And I really think that if I had gone down the really traditional rigid pathway of clerkship, grad, working at a commercial firm, I wouldn't have realized how many other opportunities there are for you with a law degree. And I certainly wouldn't have gone and worked as a journalist. So I think to anyone who's applying for a clerkship, I think it's a great thing to do, and it's a wonderful experience. And it's really good to be able to sort of have little samples of working at different firms and see which one you think you would fit in with most. But it's certainly not the be all and end all by any means.
Yes, I think I also agree, and I thank you so much, because a lot of law students do put a lot of pressure of themselves into like applying for clerkship, and they will feel like missed out because this is the way we've been taught. So the next question is, if for students who are interested in working at a court and follow the same path, career pathway as you, what are the most important skills in your career, and how did you develop them?
I think a very important skill for being a judge's associate is having good attention to detail. A lot of your work involves drafting judgments or sentences or orders for your judge, and you don't want to have any little typos in there, or put an extra zero on how much money someone is supposed to get, or how long they're supposed to spend in jail. So something that I learned from a judge that I previously worked for is, I know it's hard to do at the moment with everyone at home, but just print out whatever you're writing and proofread it with a pen, because you would be surprised how many typos your eye just skims over when you're reading it on a screen. Yeah, I think attention to detail is a very important skill.
And how do you suggest like law students right now at law school, how can they develop that that type of skills during university?
Definitely. Yeah, I think, say you finished an assignment and you're so tired and you just want to hand it in and you can't be bothered to proofread it and you just sort of hope that it's fine. I would just really suggest just take the extra 10 minutes to just read it one more time. Maybe there's a typo somewhere, or maybe you've done a footnote incorrectly. You would be surprised by the little things that you can pick up and how much that can improve your mark.
Right. And how do you continue to learn and develop in your current role? And how do you stay like up to date with what's going on in the legal industry as well?
I do think there are really excellent podcasts created like within the legal profession now. There's a podcast that's been created by one of the barristers' chambers that is extremely polished, and it's basically they run seminars on very discrete areas of law, and it's really wonderful to get to hear from people that are really experienced in that very specific area of law, sort of provide an update on the latest developments in that area. So I think podcasts are really good. I also, I have Google alerts for things that I'm really interested in. So I'm very interested in defamation law. And so I have a Google alert set up for any news about the latest news reporting on defamation court cases, as well as the names of prominent lawyers within the defamation sector. Anytime that their name comes up in a news article, I get an alert for it. And I think that's a really good way to stay on top of what's happened over the past day.
Yes, you mentioned about podcasts. Do you have any favorite podcasts at the moment you could recommend to law?
There's a really excellent one that's put out by ABC called The Law Report. And they just do a really quick recap of the most sort of interesting developments in law. And it's not at all dry. It's something that it's not aimed just at people with law degrees. So that it's very topical and interesting.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So now we come to the last sections of our interview. So we're going to have questions and discuss about looking into the future. So the first question is, what do you see as future challenges in the legal industry, especially in the area you are working on?
I think there is still a lot of work to be done in terms of gender equality at leadership levels within the legal profession. I'm sure it's the same for you. At uni, it's so 50-50 of gender, and you know, grads, I think it's very 50-50 in terms of gender there, but the further up you go sort of towards the partnership level, for lots of different reasons, it becomes a lot more male dominated. And that also goes for at bar. Women are still not briefed as frequently as their male colleagues by firms. And I think a lot of that has to do with firms just tend to brief the same person again and again once they know them. And so if you've got a good guy that you've been briefing for 10 years, I think there's a real temptation to not reach out to a woman who works in the same area. And so that is something that I really hope to see improve. And there is something that the Victorian Bar has introduced called the Equitable Briefing Initiative, which is where firms can voluntarily agree to have a certain quota of women barristers that they brief. So I think that's a really good first step.
Right, and I also see the gender inequality issue as well, and that's why I think it's really important for like law students or law graduates to join different associations, especially such as the Victorian Women Lawyers, like what we're doing now. How do you think law students can equip themselves for the future of the legal industry?
I think technology is going to play a greater and greater role in our work. And I think that is something that we all really need to keep abreast of. I think a lot more things are going to become automated. And I think there will still be really important work for lawyers to do, but I think it will more involve, you know, important sort of interpersonal skills and things with clients and dealing with the other side in litigation or in a deal that is not something that can be replaced by an algorithm. So I would say stay on top of the latest developments in tech and work on your interpersonal skills.
Two final questions. So what's next for you in your career?
So I'm going to stay at the court for a little bit longer, probably, I would say probably not more than another year. And after that, I plan to work in litigation. I love being in court. And I would really like to practice in the area of media law, which sort of encompasses defamation and suppression orders and things like that.
That sounds really interesting. And for the final questions, if law students are interested in your work, where do you suggest they can start to find out more?
So there are always lots of jobs going for judges associate positions because it is sort of more of a short-term role. We have a pretty high turnover. And so if you're interested in working at my court, which is the county court, it's on the Victorian government jobs website. So I think if you type in Victorian government jobs into a search engine, it'll come up. And truly, I couldn't recommend being a judge's associate more highly. It's just the best job.
All right, I think this is the end of our interview. Thank you so much, Liz, for being here, and thank you for your time. It's a pleasure to have you at the Lawcate interview.
Thanks, Malside. It's been a pleasure.